Okay, I think we can start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this 37th webinar on the secret teachings of all ages. If you hear scratching in the background, that's my dog. He's dreaming right now. Anyway, this webinar series is available on makara.us under the subheadings Moria Federation webinars, shown up here, then webinar series in progress. There's also a ton of other recorded information from past webinars. It's much of it very interesting. So previous webinars of this series, The Secret Doctrine, and the new Treatise on Cosmic Fire series are also available on YouTube. Just do a search for Francis Donald and the webinar that you wish to view. You can register for these webinars on the homepage of moriafederation.com. And it's also a portal of all kinds of other interesting events and databases. Okay, we're in the middle of the section called Pymander, the Vision of Hermes, which is the last subsection of a chapter dedicated to Hermes Trismegistus. A quick recap. After wandering in the desert, Hermes went into a deep meditation during which he beheld the figure of a great dragon who announced itself to be Pymander, the mind of the universe. Pymander then revealed to Hermes a series of visions focused on the power of the word. The union of the word and the mind, Pymander said, produces that mystery which is called life. This was followed by revelation of the forming of the universe by the supreme mind working through, quote, another mind called the workman, the master builder, or the maker of things. And with that, we're brought up to the present, where we left off last time. So let's, could we get a reader for this, please?
Yeah, and just for the people in here, I'm covering for BL, so I'm using the same list I have from TCF. So if you're on the list from TCF and I choose you and you don't want to read, then just let me know. And if you're in here and you're not part of TCF and you want to read, let me know. And
yeah, if you could put in the chat if you typically read, just drop a line in the chat to Michael so that, or just in general to everyone. And then he'll also have that information. The more readers, the better, always. You know, it's one way of sort of becoming aware of each other. So anyway, how about a reader for this first one?
Okay, Eleonora.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Eleonora. Thank you.
You're welcome. In this manner, it was accomplished, O Hermes, the word moving like a breath through space, called forth the fire by the friction of its motion. Therefore, the fire is called the sun of striving. The workman passed as a whirlwind through the universe, causing the substances to vibrate and glow with its friction. The sun of striving thus forms 7 governors, the spirits of the planets, whose orbits bounded the world. And the 7 governors controlled the world by the mysterious power called destiny, given them by the fiery workmen. When the second mind, the workman, had organized chaos, the word of God rose straightway out of its prison of substance, leaving the elements without reason, and joined itself to the nature of the fiery workman. Then the second mind, together with the risen world, established itself in the midst of the universe and whirled the wheels of the celestial powers. This shall continue from an infinite beginning to an infinite end. For the beginning and the ending are in the same place and state.
Thank you. Okay. First step. In this manner it was accomplished, O Hermes. The word, moving like a breath through space, called forth the fire by the friction of its motion. So the word and the breath are deeply interrelated. And telepathy in the etheric vehicle, we learn, quote, the word goes out upon the life breath of the transmitter. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali tells us this is the Om, first the breath, then the word, and all that is appeared. And later in the same book, this list appears. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Cindy.
There are many sounds to be heard on all the planes, but on the physical is the greatest diversity. The aspirant has to develop the power to distinguish between 1, the voices of the earth, physical, the voices of desire, astral, the speech or formulated thoughts of the mind, mental. 4, the still small voice of the Christ within, Buddhic. 5, the sounds of the gods, the creative words, Atmit. 6, the word of or sound, the Om, monadic. 7, the breath, logoic. And in these distinctions are symbolically conveyed the problem of correct hearing on the various planes and in the various states of consciousness. Only the true mystic and aspirant will comprehend the nature of these distinctions. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, 337.
Any thoughts or questions about this ascending quality of sound and voice? It's the relationship between numbers 5, 6, and 7, the breath, the Om, and the creative words that Pythmander speaks. So the will to be of the creator, or first aspect, sounds the word, the second aspect in this case, in order to bring into being fire by friction, third aspect, which DK describes as the internal vitalizing fire that animates the objective solar system. So you can see the line of descent here. This fire by friction is called the sun of striving because it is a manifestation of the third principle. It strives through active intelligence. At this point, Pythmander shifts from a cosmic to a systemic perspective, much like the secret doctrine stands on at some point, shift, and we have the formation of the planets in both cases, actually, here called the 7 governors. The next phrase, whose orbits bounded the world, refers to the geocentric perspective of the ancients, who viewed these planetary spirits as governing the 7 gates into and out of incarnation. This was a completely exoteric teaching, I think a blind to the greater mysteries of that time. There's a lot of evidence suggesting that the Egyptians knew that the sun was the center of the solar system. See, next we have the 7 governors controlled the world by the mysterious power called destiny, given them by the fiery workman. This is not the usual definition of destiny, wherein certain events, meetings, etc., are preordained, thus negating free will, but is rather the opportunity for growth exemplified by the plan as it unfolds through the schemes, chains, rounds, globes, and root races, all controlled by the fiery workman, who is in our system, the solar logos. Any thoughts or questions? Anytime you have an idea, a thought, or question, just raise your hand. Okay, next. When the second mind, the workman, had organized chaos, the word of God rose straightway out of its prison of substance. The first mind, described in the text as a supreme mind, initiated creation by becoming a quote unquote enamored with its own thought. Once the outer world or chaos is organized, the word is withdrawn and the Brahma phase of creation comes to a close, to be followed by the Vishnu stage of sustaining creation. And this leaves the elements without reason. The elements referred to here are the little lives, which making up the lowest two hierarchies, called the blinded lives. They are the builders of our etheric and all etheric vehicles, and are not self-aware and are thus without reason. And joined itself to the nature of the fiery workman, the word is withdrawn and returns to its source. This phrase is described in stanza 5 of a treatise on cosmic fire version of the stanzas of Zahn. Could we get a reader, please?
Andrea.
Oops, hang on.
Yeah.
Where'd it go? Where did
I
it
don't
go?
know. Okay.
There.
There.
Just
the lower, yeah,
just the
just
dark.
the highlight. Yeah. The lower was prepared. The upper was resigned. The great five waited for the point of equidistant merging. The foundation note ascended. Deep answered unto deep. The fivefold chord awaited the response from those whose hour had come.
Thank you. So, the thing that really struck me is I really started looking at this vision is how incredibly theosophical it was. That is to say, the parallels in theosophy are actually easily found. So this tells me that it's a true example of the ageless wisdom that this vision is. Next, then the second mind, together with the risen word, established itself in the midst of the universe and whirled the wheels of the celestial powers. So another way of saying that is the second mind, the solar logos, manifests through the central sun, and the planets are set in their orbits. And finally, this shall continue from an infinite beginning to an infinite end. But the beginning and the end are in the same place and state. This description of cyclicity is symbolized by the Ouroboros. From an infinite beginning to an infinite end suggests the idea of eternity. Joe Campbell says, eternity isn't some later time. Eternity isn't a long time. In fact, eternity has nothing to do with time. Eternity is that dimension of here and now, which thinking and time cuts out. This is it. And if you don't get it here, you won't get it anywhere. And the experience of eternity right here and now is the function of life. In relation to the text, eternity means that all that has been and all that will be is. That is to say, there is this perspective that stands outside the time-space continuum, where nothing was, nothing will be, rather all simply is. Any thoughts or questions? By the way, there's no stupid questions, and as long as you stay in context with what we're talking about, no stupid comments. So, feel free. Next up, could we get a reader, please?
Catherine, you want to read?
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
Mhm.
Then the downward turned, and unreasoning elements brought forth creatures without reason. Substance could not bestow reason, for reason had ascended out of it. The air produced flying things, and the waters such as swim. The earth conceived strange, four-footed, and creeping beasts, dragons, composite demons, and grotesque monsters. Then the Father, the Supreme Mind, being light and life, fashioned a glorious universal man in its own image, not an earthly man, but a heavenly man, dwelling in the light of God. The Supreme Mind loved the man it had fashioned and delivered to him the control of the creations and workmanships.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, first, then the downward turned and unreasoning elements brought forth creatures without reason. Substance could not bestow reason. That's the key statement right there. For reason had ascended out of it. Okay. During the Brahma phase, reason was part of the driving quality of the creative aspect, and therefore could be said to be in substance itself. But after that Brahmic phase, it ascended out of it and giving way to the Vishnu phase. The lesser builders, called here the unreasoning elements, could not, in and of themselves, bestow reason or the fire of mind, which had withdrawn at the end of the Brahmic phase of creation. The idea of creatures without reason, unendowed with reason, can be found in the myth of Prometheus and Lucifer, who both brought the fire of mind to humanity. Before we go on, I saw a hand jump up there, so I want to, who was that?
Hi, so I'm wondering about the mindless ones that is referenced in the Secret Doctrine. Which one is that?
Well, actually, why don't you read it? It's right here.
They, the moon gods, went each on his allotted land, 7 of them, each on his lot. The lords of the flame remained behind. They would not go, they would not create. The Bar Hishad, though possessed of a creative fire, were devoid of the higher Mahadic elements. Being on a level with the lower principles, those which precede gross subjective matter, they could only give birth to the outer man, or rather to the model of the physical, the astral man. Thus, though we see them entrusted with the task by Brahma, the collective Mahad, or universal divine mind, the mystery of the creation is repeated on earth, only in an inverted sense, as in a mirror. It is those who are unable to create the spiritual immortal man who project the senseless model, the astral of the physical being.
Okay.
God. Thank you.
Yeah. Is your question answered by this?
No. I was I'm not sure how to put it, so that's okay. I'll just.
Okay, well, think about it, and if you get some clarity on it, ask. We'll do my best to answer you. Okay, so the theme here is who can create what. In the beginning of this dialogue, after the Brahmic period, wherein the creative fire was invested in matter, after that period, the mind of the creator ascended out of matter. And actually, at that point, it formed the subplanes of the cosmic physical plane according to the elements, right? And so the difficulty, and this is described in many, many places in the Secret Doctrine, the difficulty was to impress consciousness onto the human vehicle, right? The early attempts, the vehicle was created, but the consciousness aspect would not take hold. And so we had all the mythologies of Lucifer and of Prometheus, which were able to, through incarnation, instill the form with the fire of mind. And so that's the separation, right? And as we'll find out as we go on, that this is also a function of Manu, who was the archetype, the Adam Kadmon, the archetype of the human being. And it was through the fire of that archetype that humans became potentially immortal. Okay, so let's go ahead. Next up, can we get a reader, please? Wait a minute. Next up, hang on a sec. I'm catching up, folks. Hang on. All right, so what we have here is a further description of these creatures without reason, strange four-footed, air-producing flying things, water such that swim, but all of them sharing the fact that they did not possess reason. So here's another Secret Doctrine quote about this subject. We could get a reader, please.
Kira.
And those which had no spark, the narrow-brained, took huge she-animals unto them. They begat upon them dumb races. Dumb they were, the narrow-brained themselves, but their tongues untied. The tongues of their progeny remained still. Monsters they bred, a race of crooked, red-haired covered monsters, going on all fours, a dumb race, to keep the shame untold.
Any thoughts or questions about this? No disrespect intended to the orangutans, but they seem to, at least in part, fit this description, and one wonders if just how they came into being given this esoteric history. Next up. Then the Father, the Supreme Mind, being light and life, fashioned a glorious universal man in its own image, not an earthly man, but a heavenly man, dwelling in the light of God. So this is the Manu, who the Kabbalists call Adam Kadmon. His creation and influence is detailed in stanzas 5 through 7 from the Secret Doctrine. If we could get a reader, please.
Kirsten.
The spark hangs from the flame by the finest thread of Thoth. It journeys through the 7 worlds of Maya. It stops in the first and is a metal and a stone. It passes into the second and behold a plant. The plant whirls through 7 changes and becomes a sacred animal. From the combined attributes of this, Manu, the thinker, is formed. Who forms him? The 7 lives and the 1 life. Who completes him? The fivefold. What is that? La. Okay. And who perfects the last body? Fish, sin, and soma. From the firstborn, the thread between the silent watcher and his shadow becomes more strong and radiant with every change. The morning sunlight has changed into noonday glory. This is thy present wheel, said the flame to the spark. Thou art myself, my image and my shadow. I have clothed myself in thee, and thou art my Vahan, to the day be with us, when thou shalt become myself and others, thyself and me. Then the builders, having donned their first clothing, descend on radiant earth and reign over men who are themselves.
Thank you. Okay, any thoughts or questions? Finally, the Supreme Mind loved the man it had fashioned and delivered to him the control of the creations and workmanships. Okay, so the Supreme Mind loving archetypal man, or the Manu, suggests a second ray logos, giving humanity control of the creation and workmanships suggests an activation of the third ray of creative intelligence, manifesting through the third or form principle. The Supreme Mind, through certain great avatars like Prometheus and Lucifer, endowed humanity with mind, thus enabling his reflection to mount the path of return. He really spun the web that linked one from another, and then that personality being, through trial and error, finds the path back. Bestowing control establishes humanity as the link between the lower and higher kingdoms of nature. It's really what makes him essentially immortal. Okay, next up, can we get a reader, please?
You on?
Coming. Okay, the man desiring to labor took up his abode in the sphere of generation and observed the works of his brother, the second mind, which sat upon the ring of the fire. And having beheld the achievements of the fiery workman, he willed also to make things, and his father gave permission. The seven governors of whose powers he partook rejoiced, and each gave the man a share of its own nature. The man longed to pierce the circumference of the circles and understand the mystery of him who sat upon the eternal fire. Having already all power, he stooped down and peeped through the seven harmonies, and breaking through the strength of the circles, made himself manifest to nature stretched out below. The man, looking into the depths, smiled, for he beheld a shadow upon the earth and a likeness mirrored in the waters, which shadow and likeness were a reflection of himself. The man fell in love with his own shadow and desired to descend into it. Coincident with the desire, the intelligent thing united itself with the unreasoning image or shape.
Thank you. Okay, first up, the man desiring to labor took up his abode in the sphere of generation. Again, the capital M, man, is the Manu. The sphere of generation is the cosmic physical plane. And observed the works of his brother, the second mind, which sat upon the ring of fire. Okay, the second mind is the solar logos. Sitting upon the ring of fire means presiding over the solar systemic ring past naught. The highest state of the Manu is revealed by the fact that the second mind, the solar logos, is referred to as his brother. And next up, and having beheld the achievements of the fiery workman, he willed also to make things, and his father gave permission. Okay, the father is not the a second mind. That's in the relation of brother. The Father is the supreme mind. Having witnessed the creation of the solar logos, the Manu, quote, willed to make things, meaning he took on that aspect of the logos called the will to be, and thus desired to create humanity. But the Manu embodies the first ray and thus could not create directly, but rather serve as the archetype or ideal human for those working under the direction of the Ahi. So I hope you get the sense of the Manu. He's the supreme archetypal qualities available for the root race that he oversees. And then those qualities are drawn into substance by what are called the Ahi. We read about the Ahi last time, but let's refresh our memories. Could we get a reader including this caption, please?
Yeah. Back to, oh, she's not here. So Cindy again.
Okay, the building devas are the Ahi, or universal mind. They contain within their consciousness the plan logoic and inherently possess the power to work it out in time and space, being the conscious forces of evolution. They not only embody the divine thought, but are that thought which it manifests, and it's actually actuating activity. They are essentially motion, and that's Treatise for Cosmic Fire, page 615 and 616. And then I'll read under the caption, the 9 divas, the artwork from Cambodia, 1000 CE, from left to right, Surya, the sun, on chariot, Chandra, moon, on pedestal, Shiva on bull, Varuna on crocodile, Indra on an elephant, and Kubera on horse, Agni on ram, Rahu on clouds, and Ketu on lion.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Any thoughts about this? So the Ahi are charged with the building of the form aspect based on the archetype of the Manu, right? So they're the form builders that are then carried on by the elementals who literally form through their own substance, the physical, astral, and mental bodies of humankind and all sentient beings. Okay, next, the 7 governors of whose power he partook rejoiced, and each gave the man a share of its own nature. It's really a remarkably esoteric statement. In addition to the individual impact of the heavenly men's influence in astrology, all human cycles, from chains to rounds to globes to root races, fall under the specific influence of one of the heavenly men, one or more, I should say, creating a unique signature mixture of ray energies for each of us. And so that's how we partake of the powers of the 7 governors. Any thoughts about this? Next, the man longed to pierce. Now, again, we're talking about the Manu. Longed to pierce the circumference of the circle and understand the mystery of him who sat upon the eternal fire. Himself wielding the electric fire of the first ray, the Manu, as office holder of that ray, has a resonant affinity with Shambhala, the portal between our scheme and the solar logos. But the true mystery of the eternal fire lies with the supreme mind. Remember, the solar logos is the second mind here, whereas the supreme mind, we might hypothesize to be, in relation to our solar system, the central spiritual sun on the cosmic mental plane. Next, having already all power, he stooped down and peeped through the 7 harmonies, and breaking through the strength of the circles, made himself manifest in nature, stretched out below. What a statement. Esoteric storytelling at its best. The 7 harmonies are the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, whose harmonious interrelations are numerous. For example, the odd-numbered planes are harmoniously interrelated, as are the even-numbered planes. This is also true of the odd and even-numbered subplanes of each plane. In addition, the 4 higher etheric subplanes of each plane are harmoniously related to the 3 manifested planes beneath them. Breaking through the strength of the circles reminds us that these planes are spherical rather than being stacked, as shown for convenience sake in most charts. Made himself manifest to nature, stretched out below, suggests that the Manu informs the 7-fold principles of the human constitution with his own archetypal impress, right? This is how he makes himself manifest, is through the principles of a human being, as described here. Old theosophy, but nonetheless. Next, the man, looking into the depths, smiled, for he beheld a shadow upon the earth and a likeness mirrored in the waters, which shadow and likeness were a reflection of himself. More charming storytelling. Again, the man with a capital M is the Manu. The shadow upon the earth is physical man. The likeness mirrored in the waters of substance. Which shadow and likeness were a reflection of himself affirms that the Manu is indeed the archetype for humanity, or more specifically, for the current root race. Next, the man fell in love with his own shadow and desired to descend into it. The shadow being the form aspect, the sheaths. A poetic euphemism for the will to be, a concept we've looked at before, often found in ancient mythology. And finally, the rubber hits the road. Coincident with the desire, the intelligent thing united itself with the unreasoning image or shape. The intelligent thing is universal mind, which Pymander is a personification of, reflecting itself in the soul, first in the soul aspect, who are the sons of mind. The unreasoning image or shape is the form aspect created by the lower 2 hierarchies, who, because they themselves are not self-aware, are incapable of informing their creation with reason. But through the will to be of the Manu, whose archetype embodies the solar principle, humanity was created. Okay, if you have any thoughts or questions, just raise your hand. Next up, can we get a reader, please?
Yep. Eleonora.
Okay. Nature, beholding the descent, wrapped herself about the man whom she loved, and the two were mingled. For this reason, earthly man is composite. Within him is the sky man, immortal and beautiful. Without its nature, mortal and destructible. Thus, suffering is the result of the immortal man's falling in love with his shadow and giving up reality to dwell in the darkness of illusion. For being immortal, man has the power of the 7 governors, also the life, the light, and the word. But being mortal, he is controlled by the rings of the governors, fate or destiny. Of the immortal man, it should be said that he is hermaphrodite, or male and female, and eternally watchful. He neither slumbers nor sleeps, and is governed by a father, also both male and female, and ever watchful. Such is the mystery kept hidden to this day, for nature, being mingled in marriage with the sky man, brought forth a wonderful, most wonderful 7 men, all bisexual, male and female, and upright of stature, each one exemplifying the natures of the 7 governors. These, O Hermes, are the 7 races, species, and wheels.
Thank you, Eleanor. Okay. The meaning of these first 2 sentences is obvious. The sky man is the monad, demonstrating through the soul. Nature provides the threefold personality vehicle. Thus, suffering is the result of the immortal man's falling in love with his shadow and giving up reality to dwell in the darkness of illusion. Falling in love with his shadow is not the whimsy it is made out to be, but is rather a metaphor for a critical aspect of the plan to link with, and through that linking, save the quote unquote lesser lives through the activities of the 4 lower hierarchies, as shown here, really all hierarchies. Substance is only drawn up into a higher stage of existence through the hierarchy that stands above it. That's why you see this positive and negative polarities, right? So the lowest of lives, which are ruled by the moon, and whose quality is instinctual selfishness, are gradually over the millennia, really over a period of an entire solar logoic manifestation, are gradually drawn into through their use by the higher hierarchies, are gradually drawn into awareness of that hierarchy, and in a future cycle, a solar cycle, they become this higher hierarchy. So without this descent into matter, matter itself could not be saved. There would be no method of salvation. The same thing is true for the 6th hierarchy into the 7th. And then we get into what we know about, which is the personality aspect being drawn in through the medium of the soul into the hierarchy of monads, right? This is the process we're all engaged in. But the process starts at the very bottom and continues all the way up through all the hierarchies. Any thoughts, any questions about this? And the other thing I could point out is that any given hierarchy is positively polarized to all the hierarchies beneath it. So it's not just the immediate hierarchy that is drawing up the hierarchy beneath it, but each hierarchy is drawing up all the hierarchies beneath it through those lesser hierarchies. So you have this alternation of positive, negative polarities that act to draw the lesser lives into the greater. I saw a hand up. Was that Anna Sklar?
It was
It's Tara. Does this go on forever? Do they continue to make new little babies? You know, or is it like to the 49th?
You mean in terms of, when you say, does this go on forever, do you mean the hierarchies?
No, to the left, because I what I've read and what I'm working on is I'm just wondering if this is if the little because I think it's the diamond shaped, the polarities, and so I would think that they would keep going on forever and ever. I don't know. I'm being throttled right now, so I can't really think. But do the left, the little the polarity picture, do they keep going on? Do they make littler polarities over and over? That's my question.
Yeah, you could say that that's the case. In fact, the hierarchies themselves go way beyond those included in our solar system. I mean, these 12 hierarchies just have to do with our solar system. There's trillions upon trillions of parallel sets of hierarchies, but there are also hierarchies that go well up beyond. In fact, we looked at this in Treatise on Cosmic Fire in our last session, that it goes way beyond the causal body of the cosmic plane, which is where our set of 12 hierarchies ends, right? So it's way beyond that. So in a sense, what you could say is correct, that it's a continuous stream of positive and negative currents up, and the whole system is oriented towards a positive polarity drawing forth substance into spirit. You could say that there's one great system that draws substance towards spirit, and that manifests at each hierarchical level. Yes, anyone else? That start to make sense? Theosophy is a terrific key for these dialogues between Hermes and Pymander. I'm sure that a well-versed Buddhist could put the entire vision in Buddhist terms as well, because the ageless wisdom has many ways of saying the same thing, right? Many methods of interpretation. Okay. Next up. For being immortal, man has the power of the 7 governors, also the life, the light, and the word. MPH has earlier identified the 7 governors as the 7 planets. The power comes through the gradual mastery through initiation of the 7 rays. Life, light, and the word was a subject of the earlier part of this narrative, and is a way of describing the first, second, and third principles. But in here we have the 7 gates of the 7 planets. Next, being mortal. Wait a minute. Hang on a sec. Yeah, here we go. But being mortal, he is controlled by the rings of the governors, fate or destiny. Here, Pymander makes a distinction between the power of the planets as governors and the rings of those governors. The latter is related to specific negative aspects or personality responses to planetary energies that are taken on when one descends through these gates into incarnation, and are released when ascended back through these gates in the quote unquote to the quote unquote sky man. The specific negative energies of each of these planetary rings is described further in the dialogue, so I won't get into them now. Next, of the immortal man, it should be said that he is hermaphrodite, or male and female. The word hermaphrodite is a combination of Hermes and Aphrodite, or Mercury and Venus. These come into a permanent psychophysical conjunction after the 4th initiation, as described here by DK. Could we get a reader, please?
Yeah.
Scott can read too, by the way. There's some people that read here that are not being called on just because you're not familiar with them.
No, I don't see Scott in the participant list.
Oh, he's not here today. Oh, I thought he was. Oh, okay.
But if I'm missing anybody.
There's Anne Veronica has her hand raised. Are you raising your hand to read, Anne Veronica?
She does.
Yes, hello. I've just come in, so I can read now.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
After the fourth initiation, when the work of the soul is accomplished and the soul body fades out of the picture, only the quality which it has imparted in substance is left as its contribution, individual, group, or planetary, to the sum total of manifestation. All that remains is a point of light. This point is conscious, immutable, and aware of the two extremes of the divine expression, the sense of individual identity and the sense of universality. These are fused and blended into the one. Of this one, the divine hermaphrodite is the concrete symbol, the union in the one of the pair of opposites, negative and positive, male and female. In the state of being, which we call the monadic, no difference is recognized between these two because, if I can bring such ideas down to the level of the intelligence of the aspirant, it is realized that there is no identity apart from universality and no appreciation of the universal apart from the individual realization, and this realization of identification with both the part and the whole finds its point of tension in the will to be, which is qualified by the will to good and developed from the consciousness angle by the will to know. Rise and Initiation 106.
Thank you, Ann Veronica. Okay, key here is the statement, there is no identity apart from universality and no appreciation of the universal apart from the individual realization. That's why the two parts are necessary and the two fundamental components of reality during manifestation. You have to have, ultimately all identity is universal. We are all one, right? And that's the universal aspect. But there's no appreciation, which is an interesting word, of that universal principle, except through each individual sentient comprehension of the universal. So that's the yin yang of the hermaphrodite, right? The form aspect usually described or personified by the female, and the spirit aspect by the male, and they are in truth one, two aspects of the same concept. I see Eleonora's hand. Yes, Eleonora.
I'm sorry, but it's off the subject that you were talking about. The card that is displayed. What deck is that from? That's fabulous. The symbolisms are just overwhelming. Overwhelming.
Yeah, it's great. It's the best, it's what you want to do. I can't tell you, first of all, to answer your question exactly. And I don't know even that it's from a tarot deck. This could be, since it's numbered 4, it's first time really I'm looking at some of these qualities. The Emperor, of course, is number 4, and this will be a very esoteric understanding of what the Emperor truly is, which is the dual aspect. Also, the 4th, interestingly, relates it to DK's 4th initiation, so there's that as well. It says here something like the two together make one, and you have the serpents of wisdom. Yeah, it's the pelican, which is the symbol of unity, who sheds its own life blood for the singular individuals to partake of, right? So that's another symbol of the same idea. I agree. I love this card.
Yeah, the lion even itself, right, where it's placed, because of the the tarot deck, the symbolisms on that, and it's got Mercury on the chest, and it's just fabulous. Yeah. Okay, I'll look into it. If you find out anything, let me know.
Here's one thing you can look for. First of all, just go to and put in hermaphrodite in a Google search,
Mhm.
put into row, hermaphrodite to row, and I bet out of the mini cards you get, you'll find this, and then click on the site and see if you can find more. I didn't do that. I didn't explore it further than just to get the image because I was just thrilled to have the image. So thank you.
We've got a lot of things going on. Three seminars or whatever you want to call this, meetings is a lot to entail. So
Yeah,
I understand.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
You're
Bye
welcome.
now.
Are there other hands up?
Yeah, Yvonne.
Hi, Yvonne.
Hi there. As far as that hermaphrodite, I just wanted to mention that's part of evolution. We're all going there. If we're halfway evolved now, we're in the fourth round.
Hmm. Hmm.
By the sixth or seventh, we will all be hermaphrodites.
Yeah, something to look forward to, huh? Right. It's part of the return to unity,
Yeah,
right?
right.
It's the record. By the way, Yvonne, I just finished your last paper today.
I saw that. Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, first of all, he talks about here at the fourth initiation, there's also a literal bonding with the Deva kingdom, which is another way of seeing the feminine aspect. At the sixth initiation. So you actually leave the human kingdom and move into the fifth kingdom, and that is a unification of the Devic and human kingdoms, right? So also in later root races, this bonding will have at least some aspects of this bonding will come about. So it's a fascinating concept. It plays a lot in mythology. Okay. So next up, he neither slumbers nor sleeps and is governed by a father also both male and female and ever watchful. So who is the father? From the perspective of the monad, he is Sanat Kumara, who also, as stated by DK, partakes both of universal identity and individual realization, right? So this is the fundamental duality of all deity, which is that it recognizes itself in essence, that is universally, and in those component parts that make it up. So in the case of Sanat Kumara, each of the kingdoms of nature form chakras in its body. Each human being forms a cell in the body. So there's this dual awareness of partaking of both the universal and individual. This last passage describes the 7 men who are the manus of the 7 root races, each exemplifying the qualities of one of the 7 heavenly men. Why? Because each root race is overseen by some quality, and each quality is personified by one of these heavenly men. So, and that's why the chains, for instance, are named in accordance with the planets. The Saturn chain, which is also called the moon chain, was the 3rd chain. That was the last chain, and that's because it was a form developing chain. Relates to the Lemurian race, which is a form developing race, right? So Saturn, being the 3rd ray ruler, oversees that. He's also the permanent atom of the cosmic physical plane. So anyway, on this idea, we will turn to HPB again for more info on Manus. Can we get a reader, please?
Catherine.
Let us now analyze the word or name Manu, Orientalists and their dictionaries tell us that the term Manu is from the root man, to think, hence the thinking man. But esoterically, every Manu, as an anthropomorphized patron of his special cycle or round, is but the personified idea of the thought divine as the Hermetic Pymander. Each of the Manus, therefore, being the special God, the creator and fashioner of all that appears during his own respective cycle of being, or Manvantara. Thoth runs the Manus, or Dian Johans, if I said that properly, errands. So let's see, Thoth runs the Manus errands and causes the ideal prototypes to expand from without, viz. To cross gradually on a descending scale all the planes from the noumenon to the lowest phenomenon, to bloom finally on the last into full objectivity, the acme of illusion or the grossest matter.
So noumenon and phenomenon are related words. Noumenon is the source, spiritual source, as in the case of the Manu, being the noumenon of the phenomenon of a incarnate human being. Okay, and this is done through on a descending scale through all the planes, forming on the way sheaths for each plane of a human being, right? The 7 principles until they're at last into full objectivity, the acme of illusion. Or grossest matter. Okay. All right. Yes, Catherine Davison has her hand raised.
Yeah, that was me reading all the long syllabled words.
Thank you, Catherine. Do you have any more thoughts?
Well, I guess my little question is is the Cliff Notes version of that another incredible image, by the way? The idea that the purpose is to create one continuous line from the highest plane, so to speak, source to the densest and then back again, or okay, thanks.
That's right. Yeah, nothing is left out, as you know, and you could say that the interrelation of those is the purpose of all manifestation. The interrelation of all the links, the infinite number of links between the higher and lower, those hierarchies that are more spiritually realized because they're more conscious of their inherent spirituality, right? Because the hierarchies really are a function of consciousness. We are, sitting in our chairs wherever we are, one with this Manu that we speak of, right? But we don't know it. We don't have that consciousness developed, right? But we already are. That's the extension of the Adam Kadmon or the Manu into physicality was that extension, which is the metaphor is Prometheus bringing the fire to humanity, right? That's the fire of life, or the fire of mind, as it's also called, that actually makes us that being, right? It unites us with that being. It's not that, we'll eventually get to a point where we find that being outside ourselves. It's that we discover that, in fact, we are that being, and here we have a nice picture of him coming out of the fish's mouth, which is, always an indication of the mystery of the deep, the waters are the waters of mystery, and he pops out into reality. All right. Okay. So could we get a reader for this, please?
Yeah, Kira.
After this manner were the 7 men generated. Earth was the female element, and water the male element, and from the fire and the ether they received their spirits, and nature produced bodies after the species and shapes of men. And man received the life and light of the great dragon, and of the life was made his soul, and of the light his mind. And so all these composite creatures containing immortality, but partaking of mortality, continued in this state for the duration of a period. They reproduced themselves out of themselves, for each was male and female. But at the end of the period, the knot of destiny was untied by the will of God, and the bond of all things was loosened. Then all creatures, including man, which had been hermaphroditical, were separated, the males being set apart by themselves, and the females likewise, according to the dictates of reason. Then God spoke to the holy word within the soul of all things, saying, "Increase in increasing, and multiply in multitudes, all you, my creatures and workmanships. Let him that is endued with mind know himself to be immortal, and that the cause of death is the love of the body. And let him learn all things that are, for he who has recognized himself enters into the state of good."
Thank you. Okay, first up, earth was the female element and water the male element. And from the fire and the ether, they received their spirits. And nature produced bodies after the species and shapes of men. Okay, that which constitutes the male and female aspects depends on the relationship of that which is being described. Spirit is universally recognized as masculine. This has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with the idea of the great mother as being the source of the form aspect, right? And for that reason, we have male as spirit and female as substance. So that which the spirit inhabits, the form aspect, is universally recognized as feminine. Water is usually seen as feminine, but when it stands in a causal relation or is seen to embody the sacred, such as holy water, it can become masculine. In other words, it becomes the source. It becomes the spirit aspect. HPB gives us an example here. Could we get a reader, please?
I can read.
Great.
The well played a prominent part in the mysteries of the Bacchic festivals. In the sacerdotal language of every country, it had the same significance. A well is the fountain of salvation, mentioned in Isaiah 3. The water is the male principle in its spiritual sense. In its physical relation, in the allegory of creation, the water is chaos, and chaos is the female principle vivified by the Spirit of God. The male principle. Is this unveiled?
Okay. Yeah. So, right. Because this water, the sacred water, is vivified by the Spirit of God, it itself becomes the male principle in relation to the one receiving that water, which is in this case called the earth. Okay, thank you. So next, and man received the life and light of the great dragon, and of the life was made his soul, and of the light his mind. So the great dragon or Pymander is the Manu, as noted by HPB. In human incarnation, universal life is embodied by the soul aspect, and the light of that life by the manasic aspect or mind, right? And so all these composite creatures containing immortality, but partaking of mortality, continued in this state for the duration of a period. So given the context, this quote unquote period is probably the cycle of a Manu, which is one full root race. They're actually the quickest to cycle in and out. The longest lasting are the lords of civilization, but the Manu come and go with a root race, which is still millions and millions of years. But a new form and a new archetype is needed for each respective root race. And so all these composite creatures containing immortality, wait a minute, I just read that. Next up, they reproduce themselves out of themselves, for each was male and female. Okay, a couple of references here. There's the self-generating ones. These highest beings are self-generating. In other words, the fecundating principle is actually divine thought. And so they spontaneously emerged out of themselves, right? Also, you can, this could refer to the first half of the Lemurian race before the separation of the sexes, when they literally were more of an amorphous nature and emerged. They were both male and female within themselves and emerged out of themselves. It was considered actually, and it's from one perspective, an involutional step to create the separation of the sexes, right? Next up, but at the end of the period, the knot of destiny was untied by the will of God, and the bond of all things was loosened. Then all living creatures, including men, which had been hermaphroditical, were separated, the males being set apart by themselves, and the females likewise, according to the dictates of reason. This refers to the second half of the Lemurian race, according to the dictates of reasons, may refer to the individualization of humanity, which took place at that time, since individualization opened the path to reason or mind, the energy of the soul. And next, then God spoke to the holy word within the soul of all things, saying, increase, and in increasing, and multiply in multitudes, all you, my creatures and workmanships. So here we have the command to people the earth after the separation of the sexes and individualization. What, we may ask, does he mean by the term workmanships? Workmanship usually refers to the quality of work. We may have a clue in Pymander's name for the solar logos, the fiery workman. So possibly his references to humanity as the workmanship of the fiery workman. Just a guess. So, of course, God spoke to the holy word within the soul of all things, because it's from the soul that reincarnation originates. So, basically this is the monadic principle, which is the will to be, in essence, commanding the soul aspect to begin its process of incarnation. Next up, Let him that is endued with mind know himself to be immortal, and that the cause of death is the love of the body. This command marks the turning point from involution to evolution in this whole dialogue here. With this command, we turn on that lowest point of the parabola from form identification to soul identification. And finally, and let him learn all things there are, for he who has recognized himself enters into the state of good. We might hypothesize that learning all things that are refers to the unseen realities of the higher planes, but it might also be saying learn all things as they are, rather than as they seem to be in this realm of the great illusion. This passage from Raised Initiations gives us further insight. Can we get a reader, please?
Yes, Kirsten.
The basic essential of pure character. This is something more than just being good. It deals with the matter aspect and has relation to the hold or control that the form has over the man. We might express in this way and therefore give its more occult connotation. If one or other of the three lower elementals, the physical, the astral, and the mental, are the controlling factors in the life of the man, he is, by the very fact, put into a position of danger and should take steps to arrest that control prior to an attempt to enter into the formless realm.
Any thoughts about this? Any questions? Thoughts or questions on anything in this passage?
I think two people have their hand up. So,
Okay, good.
Lisa.
Yes, thank you. When you were speaking of the root races and mentioning they are millions of years, are there not sub-root races within the root races?
Indeed, there are.
Yeah, such as there was a nice diagram in Hidden History of Humanity documentary. If you've seen that by Philip Lindsay.
Yeah.
You wouldn't happen to have a diagram like that.
Not right now.
Somewhere.
I can call, but yeah, but it's so, just visualize, that every root race has 7 sub races. In fact, the Atlantean root race only made it through 4 of those sub races before it was necessary to end the entire race, because it had empowered actually what happened is the Dark Brotherhood were able to impress upon the consciousness of the people and control them, because they didn't have the individuality of mind. And so they were able to control large swaths of the population. And it was deemed by the hierarchy that it was actually better to end the entire race than to let it progress to the next race, because it had, you could say, in that root race had failed. And so we also have in Lemurian times, we have particulars about the subraces. For instance, it was in the 3rd subrace of Lemurian that we individualized, which was a momentous beginning. That was when the souls acquiesce to overshadow individual human beings, right? And in our current root race, we're in the 5th subrace of the 5th root race, and developing, just beginning to develop sensitivity to higher mind, but the entire root race, Aryan, is oriented towards the development of mind.
And if you don't mind, one more thing. What happens to those sub-races that did not come to be? Does it have to be, do they manifest elsewhere? Does
I
it
see
get
what you're saying.
continued in some way?
It's actually, you could think of it more as a life wave than as a group of people. Okay.
Okay.
We tend to think of, a race as a group of people, and like these people didn't happen, right? It's not that. It means that the life wave that progressed through the fourth subrace weren't then able to, it was a great victory for the dark powers, because that life wave wasn't then allowed to progress into the fifth subrace of that fourth root race of the Atlantean, right? And in some ways, we're facing a similar crisis now because of all the inhibiting factors for moving forward, largely having to do with with our environment as a globe, right? We're fast rendering this globe uninhabitable through global warming, et cetera, but thus hindering, and this would be definitely the agenda of the Dark Brotherhood, the progression into the fulfillment of the fifth subrace of the fifth race, because that's when soul connection becomes more and more common. The sixth subrace is actually that higher mental is the norm at that time, so that's something the Dark Brotherhood is vested in keeping from happening. But of course they can't. What they can do is delay, and that may be indeed what's going on. We may
Yes, thank you. I can't wait for the sixth sub-race. I'm
Yeah.
waiting.
Well, you can, initiation and the spiritual path, walking the path, is a way of anticipating the sixth in general. You as groups, as we move into the Aquarian age, as individuals, as we progress on the path, actually are partaking in the qualities of what will be common in millions of years in the sixth root race.
Yes, I know what you're saying. And thank you very much for answering that.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yes, Yvonne.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about Manu, like the qualifications or background, like the heavenly men, and that they have to go through the human kingdom or the solar logos. But what is the Manu? What's that background on that?
It's a cosmic being. It's one hint we have in this reading is that it's the brother of the logos, which suggests that it's really tells us outright that it's a cosmic being. So you have all types of cosmic beings. Plane lords are Davic cosmic beings, but in this case, it's a very specific being who personifies an entire root race. So you could say, in fact, that it is the life, in the same way that humanity, which is the throat center of the planetary logos, is an individual, is a singularity, right? You could say that this entire root race also can be described as a singularity. In fact, during this time, they're one and the same, that being who is humanity and that being who is the Manu of this root race. He's one of 7 expressions of that being who is humanity. Does that make sense?
Okay, so he's like a brother to the planetary logos or the heavenly men?
He'd be a
One of
cosmic.
those 7? One of those 7 or?
Yeah, he's one of the 7 that embody the human kingdom itself, right? He's not a planetary being. He is a great archetype. All the kingdoms in nature are personified archetypes, right? Like, for instance, there is a great being who is the animal kingdom.
Okay.
Right? A much greater being is the human kingdom. That human kingdom is divided into 7 great beings, just like Sunat Kumara is a reflection or an extension of the planetary logos, right? So this current Manu is the archetype or the representative that is the human human kingdom being. He's the current archetype of that. I don't know how to, every planet would have such a being because every planet has a humanity, even though the rest, it would seem, are not in form, physical form, right? They would also have manus in their schemes that would represent those planetary kingdoms, right?
So each root race will have a different Manu, like you say, the 6th
Yes.
race will have a different Manu. And as far as root races up in Cosmic Fire, isn't there a chart on tribes and root races and all that she has?
In branch races.
Branches, yeah. There's a nice chart there.
Yeah, it's a very complex subject. We'll be getting there in Secret Doctrine eventually. It's that, in fact, that subject is coming up very soon, in fact.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Yvonne. Anyone else? Okay. So for the next paragraph, we turn to page 40 in the folio edition, which is the last page of the chapter. Could we get a reader for this?
Yeah, Yvonne, you want to read?
Okay, and when God had said this, Providence, with the aid of the 7 governors and harmony, brought the sexes together, making the mixtures and establishing the generations, and all things were multiplied according to their kind. He who, through the error of attachment, loves his body, abides wandering in darkness, sensible and suffering the things of death. But he who realizes that the body is but the tomb of his soul rises to immortality. Then Hermes desired to know why men should be deprived of immortality for the sin of ignorance alone. The great dragon answered, to the ignorant, the body is supreme, and they are incapable of realizing the immortality that is within them. Knowing only the body, which is subject to death, they believe in death because they worship that substance, which is the cause and reality of death. Then Hermes asked how the righteous and wise pass to God, to which
Pymander.
Pymander replied, that which the word of God said, say I, because the Father of all things consists of light, life and light, whereof man is made. If therefore a man shall learn and understand the nature of life and light, then he shall pass into the eternity of love and light.
Life and light. Yeah. So Pymander, I think, is a French word. It would be pronounced something like poimandre or poimandre. It's, if somebody's speaks fluent French here, you could correct me. I'm sure I need correction. But anyway, so that in English is the OI is changed into a Y, so it's just Pymander in English.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so first up, and when God has said this, Providence, with the aid of the 7 governors in harmony, brought the sexes together, making the mixtures and establishing the generations, and all things were multiplied according to their kind. Okay, the dictionary definition of the word providence is the protective care of God, which seems to work here. The inclusion of harmony is interesting. The only other use of this term was when Manu, quote, heaped down through the seven harmonies and breaking through the strength of the circles, made himself manifest in nature stretched out below. However, I suspect that what's meant here is something akin to the law of attraction that's created by these alternating harmonies, right? But the main thrust is pretty evident. Next up. He who through the error of attachment loves his body abides wandering in darkness, sensible and suffering the things of death. But he who realizes the body is but the tomb of his soul rises to immortality. This is clear enough. Darkness and the things of death represent an orientation towards form life. Realization that the body is but the tomb of the soul brings to mind the 20th arcanum of the Tarot. Paul Foster Case's commentary on this arcanum is instructive in light of our narrative. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Yeah, let's see. And Veronica.
Shin, pronounced sheen, means tooth, probably a serpent's fang, and suggests sharpness, acidity, active manifestation. The number of the letter
Hang on
300.
just a second. That he's talking about this Hebrew letter right here called Sheen, okay? And it's called the serpent's tooth. Go ahead. The number.
The number of the letter 300 is the value of the Hebrew word Rosh, Elohim, which means life, breath of the divine ones or Holy Spirit. We may understand this letter as being a symbol of the power which tears down the limitations of form as teeth break up food. As the serpent's fang, it represents the power which kills the false personality and its sense of separateness. Fire is the element attributed to Shin. It is the particular quality of the solar force and of the Mars vibration. Its color is scarlet. The musical tone is C natural. Pluto and Vulcan are attributed to Shin. Perpetual intelligence is the mode of consciousness. Its name is derived from a Hebrew root meaning to stretch. This implies that the perpetual intelligence is an extension beyond the limits of the modes of consciousness common to most human beings. The name also implies everlasting eternity and thus conscious immortality. The Tarot by Paul Foster, case 199.
Thank you. Okay, so you can see a lot in here that refers to our subject matter. And also that suggests the first initiation, not least of which is the ruling planets of Pluto and Vulcan, which are important agents in that first initiation. And of course, that's where you begin to awake from the tomb of matter, right? Okay.
May I ask something?
Of course.
You said before that Saturn is the permanent atom, the physical permanent atom of the solar logos, and that's why
Of
the
the cosmic
chain
physical plane.
of the cosmic physical plane. So that's why the chains and the globes are called after planets. Can we talk about some more planets in these chains? I mean, we've got the Earth chain, the Moon chain. Do they also pertain to some atoms of the physical, cosmic physical plane?
Well, there's only one permanent atom for the cosmic physical plane because
And that's Saturn.
it's physical, because it's physical. You would have to go up into the cosmic planes, and there you're beyond the purview of the planets, right? Because the planets belong to this solar system. So it's kind of unique in that way. I hadn't really thought about this before, but there's only one all-inclusive physical plane. And, this also has to do with the fact that Saturn is a synthesizing planet, that at the end of physical manifestation, all planets eventually are subsumed, is that the right, collected and expressed through a progression of 3 synthesizing planets. And the first of those is Saturn. And that, I think, has to do with its relation to the permanent atom of the cosmic physical plane. In other words, it holds in itself the entire matrix, the energy matrix of the cosmic physical plane. And when we're drawn up, when all the planets finally are drawn into synthesis, that's the first synthesis, is that of physical. And then beyond that, you move to the synthesis of Neptune, which would be the astral plane, Varuna, who is the lord of that plane, and a sublord of the solar systemic astral plane, which would be represented by Neptune, right? 6th ray ruler. And so that would be the next synthesis. And then finally Uranus, which in this aspect would be a 1st ray ruler, not the 7th, which would be the final synthetic in the mental plane. And that would take us back to our source in the cosmic mental plane.
So you're going on the cosmic planes. I was wondering about our planes. There are the rounds, there are the chains. I can't remember what else is. Now, what are we talking when we go on the cosmic planes? Are we talking about rounds, about chains?
Well, I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
As far as I can understand, I see you're going onto the cosmic astral plane and onto the cosmic mental plane, isn't that right?
At the final synthesis of the solar system, right? Yeah.
Okay, but
So,
I'm
before
trying
that-
to make a connection with the chains and the.
all that will have finished. I see. Yeah, you're okay. Yeah, right. It's really the ray and qualitative influences of the planets that affect the chains. For instance, I'd need to pull them up. You're catching me off guard here, but the chains to come are ruled by the higher planets, and as we move up into the synthesizing chains, we would partake of the spiritual qualities of those planets. We're on the earth chain now because we're at the most physical, represented by the element of earth. But I can't specifically comment about the quality and nature of the planets vis-a-vis the change to come at this point. Not being Michael Robbins, I don't have all things at my fingertips. But
it's a question I've asked also, Michael. It's something that's puzzling me, because in the Cosmic Fire book it says somewhere that the chains, when we say earth chain, moon chain, actually it's another name, as we say, physical body, astral body, and mental body. But I haven't made the connection yet. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, you have chains, and you also have globes, which also, this is the only globe in our round within the 4th chain that is purely physical, completely partaking of the element of earth. We will progress in the next change back to the level of water. Of course, it won't be literal water. Water on that globe will be of a substance more akin to the astral water, right? And that will be the densest element of that globe. All the more so for the chains, because this is also the fourth chain. So we're literally in the only globe where you have that densest point of physicality, fourth chain, fourth round, fourth globe. Everything from here on moves into more tenuous substance, right? As far as the astral bodies, mental bodies, etc., those change radically, even with each root race, let alone each globe, right? And the substance, therefore, also changes based on, where in the chain it is, which round it is, So it's an incredibly complex subject, but there are certain ways of understanding it.
Okay, thank you, Francis. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. It's a very interesting subject. I'm not fully prepared to discuss it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, Yvonne, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I was just going to say it's the Solar Logos has 7 schemes, and each scheme has seven chains, and then there's rounds of that. So maybe that chart, and that's in Cosmic Fire also, would help her.
Yeah, there's a lot of charts. You can even just Google theosophy, always put that in, and then put 7 chains, 7 schemes, and you'll get charts from that. But the scheme is the first, the 7 schemes are to the solar logos what the 7 chains are to each planet. Okay, so you go through 7 phases of becoming. The first 3 are involutional, they're form building. That's realized finally in the 4th round of the 4th globe of the 4th chain. And then everything after that, and by the way, we're at that point with the 5th root race. We're the first root race beyond this absolute midpoint of our entire scheme, right? Everything that's led us, and Atlantis was the deepest point of materiality, the 4th root race of the 4th globe, of the 4th round, of the 4th chain, right? And then as soon as we went up to the 5th root race, we began the evolutional process, for the entire scheme. So it's a momentous movement that changed between the last root race and this one. That's one of the reasons that the Dark Brotherhood took the opportunity at that time, because they had everything in their favor. They had the densest of material illusion going on at that time. And so they pulled all the stops in order to destroy the process. And, they managed to cut short an entire root race. But you can't stop a scheme from manifesting,